Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ashley Lance, Senior Consultant with Griffin Hammis Associates, and your speaker for this topic. This is the fourth lecture in our ACRE web-based certificate course in community employment with a concentration in customized employment. As a reminder, customized employment is the latest advancement in the development of individualized community-based employment methods for people with disabilities. In this lesson, you will learn about how we use job analysis to identify a job fit and how we use interest-based negotiation and job development. You'll also hear an overview about disclosure, accommodations, and self-employment. This lecture will provide you with additional information to what you've learned through the Reliance class, your readings, discussion postings, and assignments. Again, we will cover interest-based negotiation, job analysis and identifying a job match, key strategies for negotiation, and how discovery and job analysis can also lead to self-employment. As you learned in our previous webinars, there are 4 phases to customized employment. 1. Discovering personal genius. 2. Cultivating employment opportunities or job development. 3. Engaging employment supports. 4. Ongoing supports and career development. As a reminder, here's where we are in the process. Up to this point, you've completed discovery, taking the necessary time to learn about the job seeker from where they're at their best and from those who know them at their best. You've completed the list of 20 using themes, not job descriptions. And you've completed some informational interviews and observations to really solidify those 3 themes, ensuring that you're on the right path. We now begin to move further into job development and work on completing the steps that get us to that customized outcome. Throughout the webinar, we will explore how informational interviews can lead to the opportunity for job analysis and how that tool helps you get the information for the opportunity to customize employment, and even how it can lead to self-employment. As a reminder, we don't get to those outcomes unless we've completed discovery. Let's take a deeper look at the diagram, really getting into the weeds of job development. Again, we've completed discovery, and we've verified that we're on the right track with those themes, and we've begun job development. Our last lesson talked a lot about informational interviews and how we use the question, "Can I ask your advice?" to get the conversation rolling and to learn about the business. As a reminder, an informational interview is not about yourself or what your agency is going to provide through customized employment. The informational interview is strictly to go in and ask for advice and to learn about the business. After we've established some rapport with the business, then we can follow up on the conversation and discuss the opportunity to complete a paid work trial or a job analysis, and following this process is what leads you to that customized outcome. And most of all, supporting people to obtain careers. This process leads you to negotiation and making that job match that lasts in long-term employment. So let's take a closer look at all of these components that lead us to the job match. And please remember, it's a process and to trust the process. Let's take a step back and review just for a second. The first step in building rapport with a business is informational interviews. This is really where it all begins, because we're going in and we start by asking for advice. Then at that point, after the informational interview, then maybe there's opportunity for observation. And if the observation points to a potential fit, meaning are the tasks, the work conditions, the skills all lining up, or is there potential for those to line up? Reflect on what you've learned in discovery as well about who this person is as you're continuing these conversations with businesses. And then after the informational interview, and if there seems to be a good rapport going on, then ask for the opportunity to come back and try some things out. Using the terms try things out is really an opportunity for the employment seeker's skills and contributions to be seen. So by asking, could Joe come back and get his hands dirty and try a few things out? This allows the business to really see Joe's skills and contributions, his productivity, his efficiency. And then that conversation continues. So again, we're not going in right away and saying, are you hiring? We're allowing the process of the relationship to build at the same time while we're learning about the business and seeing if there's a potential job match to be found. A few reminders. Get beyond the yes-no conversations. Really try to stick with open-ended questions when you're going into a business. Also, if you see a particular need or challenge, be sure to ask for more information and then propose something that sounds like, would something like this be a benefit to your business or a benefit to the process? Would it be a benefit if this happened? Remember, you're not there to help fill a job description or an opening. Think of yourself as a consultant that goes in and helps businesses find solutions, streamline systems, and connects people. It's only after we've completed the informational interview that we get to a job analysis. So you don't want to just go into a business and say, hey, do you mind if I complete a job analysis? That's why we establish the rapport in the relationship and then propose the question. A job analysis really allows you to get to know the business on a deeper level. It gives you permission to get into the weeds, to see or be a part of the inner workings of the business, and that's where you identify the potential for opportunity. Up until this point, you have no idea if there's going to be a job match. The job analysis is the invitation to begin to figure out if there's potential. Job analysis is the foundation for employment negotiation. Just as discovery is the gateway to learning about the job seeker, so you have enough information to answer the question, who is this person? The job analysis record is the equivalent to the business end. It allows you to complete the necessary research and to gain enough knowledge to begin negotiation. And as you complete this research, you will become more confident in the negotiation process. Without completing a job analysis in some way, negotiation is very difficult, as many of us have experienced. Let's take a look at an example. This is a job analysis where we took pictures to supplement the information that we were writing down. This is about a company that produces meals to be sent over to countries that can benefit from a higher nutrition status. So they package meals that are packed full of vitamins and everything is freeze-dried, and how everything is packaged is really important. So the first picture that you see in the top left-hand corner is a picture of a tub. It has different materials that are all used to assemble the food packaging. In the next picture, you see two different tubs that are filled with rice and vitamins. Each of these, again, is very meticulous how things are measured, and it's important that the tubs are at a certain level before packaging begins. And the other pictures below, you see, again, where they're using different measurements and scales to make sure that each package is the same size. And in the bottom right-hand corner, the packages are laid out on the template and then put in the box. So this information was collected as part of one of the tasks that would be completed in this business. And the pictures assist us in understanding exactly where things have to go, because things have to be completed to that standard. So you may want to consider taking pictures and asking for permission to take pictures at the business. And then the opportunity came for the individual to go in and try things out. And then they could really show their skills and abilities in packaging the meals and to setting up the meals to the standard. As you complete a job analysis, you may see the opportunity for accommodations or where there could be benefit in setting up accommodations. So at this point, you're still gathering information, and the job analysis is an organized way to collect the information needed to negotiate. Completing a job analysis really opens the door to assess for accommodations because in the informational interview, that information isn't there yet. You're just collecting information in that stage. The job analysis is, again, where we're getting more into the weeds and so that you can see more of what's happening in the business. And with that information, you may start getting ideas around accommodations. So some accommodations that might be considered might be implementing assistive technology. It could be accessibility, or making adaptations to machines. It could also be negotiating the hours or days a person works or duties, and even the potential for resource ownership. You may find that a business could benefit from another piece of equipment that the job seeker could provide. Or you may find that there's an opportunity for self-employment because there's a need in the community that's not being met. All of these which we'll discuss later. But let's look at a couple examples of how accommodations could be made to a business. Let's look at this example of how accommodations could be made to a coffee shop. If you were completing a job analysis at a coffee shop, you would learn that some of the core duties include making espresso drinks or running the cash register. But let's look at how accommodations could be made to ensure that the customer gets the right product. In the picture on the left-hand side, you see a coffee grinder. One side is for caffeinated beans and one side is for decaffeinated beans. Now, the button for each bean looks identical, so it can be very difficult to identify which bean is decaf and which bean is caffeinated. However, the customer can always tell if they got the wrong beans. So, to help all employees, just by placing a sticker on the decaf beans indicates, hey, these are decaffeinated beans. Another example is the cash register. A cash register is not always easy to operate, let alone adding taxes and making change. So in the top right-hand corner, you see an iPad that uses the square system to be able to operate the cash register on the iPad. There's pictorial representations of each item in the coffee shop. Now, what makes those pictures unique is that to the person operating the coffee shop, the question was asked, when you think of a mocha, what do you think of? The person thought of the syrups that make up the drink. Therefore, the picture was taken of the syrups that make up the mocha. Also, to make making change easier, the tax is added in to this person's business. So if I'm purchasing a mocha, the mocha is $4.25. Everything is on the dollar on the quarter to simplify that mathematical process. Now, this is an example of someone's business, a self-employment opportunity, so the cash register was able to be customized for this person. Below, you see flashcards that were used to memorize what makes up each espresso drink, the amount of milk and syrup needed for each drink, and how to use those flashcards to support the person in making the espresso drinks. Let's look at another example for the coffee shop. This is the espresso machine. The espresso machine is made up of an espresso head that clicks in to allow the person to make the espresso. Locking in the espresso head, as you can see in the top right-hand corner, is not always easy because you have to line it up and then press it up and in. To simplify this process, orange puff paint was used to align where the espresso head fits in to the rivet in the espresso head. So, something as simple as puff paint can be considered an accommodation so the person knows where to line up the espresso head. In the picture in the bottom right-hand corner, you see two coffee cups. One is halfway full and one is full. The one that's halfway full indicates one shot, and the one that's full indicates two shots of espresso. However, the orange puff paint was used to clarify 1 dot for 1 shot of espresso, 2 dots for 2 shots of espresso. And these are accommodations that benefit all employees who work at the coffee shop. When we're completing a job analysis or identifying accommodations that may be needed on the job, disclosure of disability may be required. And in order to receive protection from the ADA or the Rehabilitation Act, we must disclose disability. To make accommodations to the job, disclosure of disability may be required, and to receive protection from the ADA or the Rehabilitation Act, disclosure is required. So that doesn't mean that we're delivering an individual's social history to the business. But what it does mean is that special attention should be given to the conversation that we're having with the job seeker prior to disclosure. When having the conversation with the job seeker, it shouldn't be a highlight of deficits. Instead, it should be a conversation about their rights. What accommodations could be made on the job to make the individual more successful? Now let's look at an example. Joe's a young man who experiences cerebral palsy. He has a support staff that assists him during meals and supports him to use the restroom. These supports don't hinder him from doing the job. However, he may need to negotiate extended break times during lunch and for restroom breaks. And so they may have to be scheduled so that his support staff knows when to come in and help with the meals and the restroom breaks. Other examples may include rest time for a seizure disorder or request for a job coach. However, the biggest reason for wanting to disclose is to receive that protection from the ADA. But it's important to know that a job seeker can choose never to to disclose their disability. There are lots of options and also lots of ways to disclose and have that conversation. But again, it should never be a way to highlight an individual's deficits. The job seeker should be in control at all times. Preparation is essential when disclosing your disability. An effective disclosure requires that you discuss your needs and that you provide practical suggestions for reasonable accommodations. One way to be comfortable with discussing your disability may be to find someone that you trust. Practice this discussion with that person. Ways to disclose, and you can find more information at the Office of Disability Employment Policy, may be in a letter or an application or a cover letter. It could be before an interview. It can also be at the interview. And also before any drug testing is completed. It could be after you have the job and then requesting the accommodation. Or again, it could be never. It's always the person's decision, and the conversation doesn't have to be awkward with the business. It can be very professional. And again, preparation prior to disclosure and making sure that the job seeker is comfortable is essential. Next, we're going to change topics a little bit and look at the anatomy of a job. So we're still on the topic of job analysis. And when we're completing a job analysis, we break down our observation into core and episodic routines, work-related activities, and job-related duties. Breaking a job analysis into these components helps us really understand the anatomy of a job. So for example, to understand how the body works, there are many different organs that each do their part. Some are major, like the heart and the lungs that we all think of when we think of anatomy. But others might be more episodic or smaller organs that we don't necessarily think of, but are really important to how the body operates. So think of jobs in the same way. There are tasks that happen daily, and almost hourly. They're very routine based. And when we think of a job, those are the things that we think of. However, there are work related activities and the culture that's not always really apparent on the outside, but really make all the difference in how that job operates. So let's take a deeper look at core routines. These are the routines that you think of when you think of a job. You think, yeah, those duties are the things that I signed up for when it comes to this job. For instance, someone wanting to be a nurse so that they can work directly with patients. Core routines are predictable. They happen often. And in a job analysis, these are the things that you would see that happen every day in, day out, maybe even at the same time of the day. These tasks are the easiest to learn and to retain when we start a job because of their frequency. So, sticking to the theme of a coffee shop, core duties may include making brewed coffee every morning and afternoon, or making specialty drinks like a latte or a mocha, serving customers, running the cash register. Episodic routines are those that don't occur quite as frequently as core routines. They take longer to learn because they don't happen as often. When you think of a job, the first thing that comes to mind are not episodic routines. They may occur weekly, maybe quarterly, but they're equally important to the success of completing the job. So, sticking to the theme of the coffee shop, these duties might be in completing inventory, quarterly staff meetings, or cleaning out the ice cream machine. Think of these duties as the things that maybe are assigned by your supervisor. When completing a job analysis, you really want to try and identify what some of those episodic routines could be, because they may be areas where more job coaching is needed, because the episodic routines take longer to learn because they're not happening as frequently as core routines. Job-related duties are those unwritten rules of the workplace. Oftentimes, they're learned through those nonverbal communications that take place, or you learn them through side conversations with coworkers, or even from the supervisor because you forgot to complete the task. So, job related duties are learned through those conversations that you'd have with the employees of the business once the rapport is established when you're completing the job analysis. They're the things that you think of that say, and you think, well, gee, no one told me about that. And lastly, culture can make all the difference in the workplace and can be a real make or break it for your job seeker. So think about the cultures that you've worked within. Were they a good fit for you? Have you ever left a job because maybe the tasks were right in line with you, but the culture just wasn't a good fit? Culture is really the underlying foundation that has to be taken into consideration when completing a job analysis and assessing for a potential job match. For example, is the organization a learning culture or more authoritarian? As you can imagine, all of these make up a job, but we don't learn them on the first informational interview. It's completed over time and as part of the process, and only done when relationships have been established. Businesses don't just provide this information oftentimes on the first conversation. So the more the relationship is established, the more insight you will gain to the individual's workforce. As a reminder, negotiation begins when the job developer sees ways in which the job seeker can contribute to the business in ways that are valuable to the business. So now let's look at interest-based negotiation. We fear negotiation because it requires us to communicate with someone different from ourselves. When using interest-based negotiation, we can battle that fear first by identifying commonalities. Remember, the person you're talking to is a person too. So identify, what do you have in common? More importantly, what are commonalities between the business and the job seeker? If you've completed discovery, you should be able to connect the job seeker with a business owner who has a similar theme. And when you find commonalities, the conversation is much less intimidating and will begin on its own. Another component of interest-based negotiation is reframing problems into solutions. In the online Relias course, you learned ways of reframing that there isn't enough transportation options, which many of us hear. However, the reframe is there are too many single car drivers. So how do we connect people to natural supports? There are lots of people that maybe work the same shifts. How could someone catch a ride? Also, when conflict arises, remember it isn't about you. Conflict simply means more information is needed. And do your best to not get defensive. See it as an opportunity for discussion and for you to provide more information. And it's really an opportunity for future negotiation. And most importantly, be sure to validate the concern and use active listening techniques. Interest-based negotiation, we are always looking for a win-win. This is not convincing the business to give up something. Instead, also reframe your thinking about negotiation. It's about meeting people, getting to know people, and connecting people so that there's a win-win for both parties. You're matching up someone who has the desire to work and to contribute, and the business has a desire for making more money and running their business better. And so you're making that job match. But you've got to get the information through discovery and through the job analysis process so that there's the opportunity to customize. Remember that interest-based negotiation is not a sales strategy. So don't be the used car salesman. Before you discuss the opportunity for a job match, you should be able to visualize what you're proposing. For example, during the job analysis of a local production company, you notice that workers are leaving the production line to move boxes. This means that they're taking off people from the production line, which means things are not getting produced. So you propose that someone moves the boxes so that no one's leaving the production line. This could increase production for the company and therefore increase the bottom line. So when you pitch the idea, say, would this be a benefit to your business if this happened? And instead of saying, I think this is how you should operate your business, all of this can happen very conversationally. Let's look at a fun example. Mario is a potential customer and the fire flower is your product. Many of us stop and try to sell the fire flower. Instead, let's sell the person doing cool stuff. Help the business visualize this is what the benefit can be. That's what you're going for. A person who can contribute to the business and increase their bottom line so that there's a win-win for all. Interest-based negotiation, like anything, takes practice and time. Think about it. First, you must spend adequate time in discovery and then get to know the business through informational interviews and job analysis. Jumping straight into negotiation will not lead to a job match because you don't have enough information. You should know what is important to the business before you're negotiating. Is it a quick turnaround on customer service? Is it profit? Is it solving problems? Is it accuracy on the job? Through a job analysis, through conversations, you're going to learn what it is that's important to that business. And you learn these things through smooth listening, not smooth talking. Much of our job as job developers is listening, collecting information, and connecting people. Let's break down the process a little bit. You first have to have knowledge of the job seeker, which again, we learn through discovery. Second, you get to know the business through informational interviews and asking for advice. If that goes well, you have the opportunity to come back and ask for the opportunity to observe others on the job. You may schedule a follow-up visit and, depending upon how that went, ask for a more in-depth look through job analysis. And as a quick note, you want to share that job analysis with the business after you've completed it. This is an opportunity to ensure you're on the same page as the business and that your observations are correct. And it's also another time to follow up with the business. Go back and sift through what you've learned through the job analysis and brainstorm with the job seekers team members or your job development team as well, and consider ways to increase efficiency for the business. So after you've completed the information, you're going back and saying, hey, this is the information I've collected. Can we brainstorm as a team? What are things that maybe you're missing, or what are things that could be implemented? So the more brains, the better. What are things that can be negotiated? So here are a few examples. It could be tasks that need to be done, like the example of moving the empty boxes from the production line. Or maybe there's an opportunity for a job seeker to bring in resources to the business so that the business could operate or offer a new product, which would be resource ownership. You could also negotiate the hours that someone works, like the example we talked about for extended break times or for assistance while they take breaks. When discussing a potential job match, we want to think about the features and benefits. What are the features of your service and what are the benefits to the business? So let's take resource ownership, for example. Joe has resources to purchase a coffee roaster. If you leave it at that, you miss the opportunity for the business to visualize the person doing cool stuff that's going to help their business. The benefit to the business is that Joe can double their production and increase their profit if he has a roaster. So when you explain the feature with the benefit, you connect all the dots. And going back to that visual, you're selling the idea of Super Mario. Throughout this process, there's no doubt that you're going to face some objections. Please don't fret. They're not about you personally. They're an opportunity for more information and for a conversation. So see, that's reframing that situation. A tool that you can use when discussing objections is feel, felt, found. We first want to affirm the objection by saying, I understand how you feel. Follow that up by sharing, others have felt that way too. And you affirm them by also letting them know that they're not alone. Others have felt this way too. And then you offer the resolution sharing, here's what they found. So let's look at the example. Joe, I understand you feel adding a position would be too costly. Pete with True Value felt the exact same way. However, they found when adding a position to streamline their customer service, this increased their customer service and turned increased revenue over time. So using feel, felt, found in our conversation can be a way to handle those objections in a not so scary way. Here's an example of how we link up the entire process. So we're linking discovery and customized job development. So here's the example in the top left-hand corner. The themes are transportation and entertainment, and those lead to informational interviews at Napa and the radio station. As you follow the circles, you can see how each develops into something different. It takes you into a new conversation. It takes you into a different opportunity. And you may identify potential opportunities that are emerging, such as the announcer at a race car track or a mobile recording studio. So pay attention to this example and how it walks you through the process. Determining business needs. So remember that businesses are not in business to employ people. Businesses are in business to make money. Also, use that social and economic capital to connect to informational interviews. Going back to our last webinar, one of the suggested activities was to list all of the people that you know and to also list other people in your agency to have them do the same thing. Who are the businesses that your organization works with? That's a step in using your social capital to look at those informational interviews and to, again, always make sure that they're in line with what you're learning in discovery and those themes. Also, make sure that you've taken time in the observation time. So you're observing the person, and also there's opportunity potentially for time-limited paid work experiences or a job analysis. And again, don't forget as you're completing the job analysis to deconstruct the job. You're really taking time to look at what is the anatomy of this position. And most of all, be sure to solve problems and bring value and benefit to the business. Think of yourself as the consultant, not just the job developer. As a recap, it's following the process. So again, it all begins with discovery and spending adequate time learning who this person is. That leads us to the opportunity for informational interviews. And remember, we don't just jump into job analysis. We have to build rapport and establish a relationship with the business because we have to get that trust established before any business wants to allow us the opportunity for a job analysis. And then once we've collected all of that information, then we have the opportunity for interest-based negotiation. And if you add all of those up, then you have the perfect opportunity to get to the job match. But if you forget one of those or don't spend adequate time in discovery, then the process makes it much more difficult to get to the job match. So it's putting all of those pieces together that gets us to the outcome. Sometimes when you complete discovery and informational interviews and job analysis, you may identify that there's a need in the community that's not being filled. And that need in the community that's not being filled could be an opportunity for self-employment. It's important to note that the process leads you to self-employment. We don't just jump in and say, I want to own a business. We have to identify, are there unmet needs in the community, and mine that supply chain that was provided in the visual example to really identify needs. So once potential for self-employment has emerged through discovery, there is additional information or research that needs to be completed. You must do some research to identify if the business concept is feasible. One of the best ways to test feasibility is to sell a few items. Selling a few items identifies are people willing to pay for your product? Additionally, just as you did with informational interviews, you want to reach out to experts near and far. Talk to local business owners in the community that can just share what it's like to be a business owner in the small town or the large city that you live within. Also connect with other business owners that may operate the same business as well, but maybe in a different town. For example, the young woman who started a coffee shop connected with small business owners in the community to talk about what it was like to own a small business in that town. But then she went outside of her town to look at how different coffee shops are structured, to test their product, maybe to complete an informational interview to see what was selling well in their community. As you can tell, connecting with other people and experts is really an integral part of each process. We're always connecting with people throughout the whole process. So with self-employment, it's also important to look at what resources are available. And there are various resources within each of your communities, I promise. One, you may want to start with vocational rehabilitation. most voc rehab programs will offer self-employment programs. So you could even complete an informational interview with your local voc rehab counselor asking what is their process around self-employment. There are also benefits through Social Security Administration for individuals who are recipients of benefits. And we'll talk about this in a later webinar, but know that there are incentives that exist, such as a plan for achieving self-support and property essential for self-support that allows individuals to keep their resources with their business separate. And again, we'll get into more about what a PASS plan and what property essential for self-support is in our last webinar. Also, your community may have local startup grants, so connecting with those local experts in your community or other business owners can help you identify what are the local startup grants in your community. And also, it's important to know that waiver dollars can be used for job coaching through self-employment. So let's look at an example. Emily is a young woman who lives in Independence. It's a small town in northeast Iowa. Prior to owning her own business, she worked in a facility-based workshop and was told many times that she was unemployable in the community. However, after a few years, she decided that she really wanted to do something differently. So the process of discovery organically happened with her and her family. Emily's someone who naturally wakes up very early in the morning, and she's at her best first thing in the day. She has the ability to connect with others, and she's well known in her small town. One of her conditions for employment was she had to work in the community. She really, and by community, I mean she needed customer interaction in an informal way and on a regular basis. She's great at making people feel important. And she's great about memorizing who people are, their family members, and following up with people. So when assessing the community, there really wasn't an informal place for people to meet. The only place that people could go are restaurants, and therefore you'd have to order a meal. There was no place to just go and have a conversation with somebody and grab a great cup of coffee. So if you ask Emily, does she like coffee? She'll say no, but my sister does. The point is, she didn't open a coffee shop because of her love for coffee. It was more about matching her conditions and contributions to a need in the community, and that was what led to self-employment for her. So looking at the photos, you can see the picture of the outside of her business, M's Coffee Company. It's a Main Street business. She employs other people who experience disabilities and those who don't experience disabilities. And then in the picture on the top right-hand corner, you can see her with Senator Tom Harkin and President Obama when she was invited to the signing of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. So Emily's got some great social capital, right? And in the bottom right-hand corner, you see the inside of her coffee shop that has a fun retro feel. And then she was able to research what products she should sell and test her feasibility before opening her business. So as you can see in this webinar, there's all sorts of information to be gathered in the process of customized employment. I encourage you for more information on all of these topics, especially for examples on self-employment, to please check out our website at griffinhammis.com. Or if you want more information referencing our book on making self-employment work for people with disabilities. Thank you.